Till after Tishrei Tovshin Lamed Aleph, the Rebbe would eat the Yontiv meals upstairs on the second floor in the apartment of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and there would be a minyan of the Elter Chassidim by the table. And the Seder was that during the meal, Rashag or Reb Shmuel Levitin or others would ask questions, and the Rebbe would answer, and there was some discussion. Also Pesach, this happened during the Seder, but not during the Seder, during the Haggadah, but during the Shulchan Aruch when they would eat the meal. So Tovshin Lamed, the second night of Pesach, Rashak says to the Rebbe that he noticed that the Rebbe doesn't eat with a knife on Pesach. Is there any reason for it? So the Rebbe says, no, there's just nothing to use a knife for. By the way, he said, I do use a knife. I use a knife for karpas, I use a knife for charesis, but otherwise there's no reason to use a knife. That's why I don't use. But not because of Pesach, because if there's an inyan not to use a knife, it would be not only Pesach, it would be any yont, any time. And then the Rebbe said that Benegei eating with a knife, he said the Frierdiker Rebbe says, gehalten stark, held very highly of the Munkacher, and the Minchas Elozar. And the Minchas Elozar writes, it's a good inyan to eat with a knife. Because it says in Zayar, Name apum char beleichel, that when you eat bread, it's like you're holding a sword, because during eating, that's when you have the Yetzer Hara that's fighting you to eat with a taiva. The Rebbe didn't tie trees, but that's the pshat. And therefore, you have to fight the Yetzer Hara. And a sword is what you use when you go to war, when you fight. So when you hold a knife, it reminds you that you're holding a sword now, that you're fighting the Yetzer Hara, so it gives you keach to overcome the Yetzer Hara. And therefore, there is an inyan to use a knife, to eat with a knife. And then they spoke about whether eating with a fork. Rashak said that the Frierdiker Rebbe did not use a fork, and the Rebbe said that he did use a fork. The Rebbe Rashab sometimes didn't use a fork. But anyway, went back to the eating with a knife. And the Rebbe said that he doesn't eat with a knife. Why? Because his father didn't eat with a knife. And the Rebbe explained that he saw that his father didn't eat with a knife ever, so he asked him why. So the Rebbe said his father told him, because on Yom Kippur, it's a mitzvah, Erev Yom Kippur, it's a mitzvah to eat. The Gemara says if you eat on Erev Yom Kippur, it's like you fasted. So in order to show that it's a mitzvah to eat, he would use both hands. But in order to make it should be beil, it should be clear that it's especially for Erev Yom Kippur to eat with both hands, so a whole year he didn't want to use both hands. When you eat with a knife, you have to use both hands. So he didn't want to eat with a knife. Now it doesn't mean that at Erev Yom Kippur he ate with a knife. He only ate with a fork, but he held it with both hands. But had he eaten with a knife always, it would always be with two hands, because there's no other way you could use a knife when you eat. But Mele didn't do it. And the Rebbe said, and that's why I do it too. I therefore don't eat with a knife, because there's a din of kibbud av, and the din of kibbud av is also la'achar meisei, that's the lashon the Rebbe said, and therefore as kibbud av, it was good for my father, it's good for me, and this is als kibbud av, I don't eat. But it's not a hero l'rabim, it's not hero for everybody. And then the Rebbe turned around to his left, and a lot of bochrim was standing there. I was there too. Actually, I was the first one in the line there, and the Rebbe looked at the bochrim. He actually looked at me, but you could see that he was looking at all the bochrim, but since I was standing there first, he looked there, and he said, "Aber ihr sollt essen mit am Messer, weil das der Mund auf Name apum char beleichel." And don't look at me why I don't, because it's not a hero protest, this is only something for me. And Take, from then on, the yeshiva bought knives for the bochrim to eat, and the bochrim started eating with a knife. Till then it was not shaykh, a bocher should eat with a knife. It's so balabatish, a bocher should use a knife. It looks like it's a balabos. But since then they bought knives, and everybody started eating with a knife, because the Rebbe said that it reminds you of Name Apum Char Beleichel. In the Chofs, Reb Zalma Duchman used to be the one to light the Beneire in the Rebbe's minyan by Minche. Now the minhag is that by Shachris, the Beneire also burns in the shul. So he would light the menorah before the davening would start in 770, the Bochrim's minyan. He would be the one, he lit the menorah, so it should be burning by the davening of Shachris. The Rebbe those years did not come out to daven with the minyan, but he would come to Kriyas HaTorah. So one of the days of Chanukah, when he came to Kriyas HaTorah in the year Tovshin Chav Gimel, he saw that the menorah was lit, the amount of candles that were supposed to be lit were lit, but there was no shamish. So the Rebbe asked, why is there no shamish? There has to be a shamish. So they brought and they lit the shamish. But then Reb Zalma Duchman wrote to the Rebbe asking, why do we need a shamish when the menorah is lit by Shachris? Since the reason why we have a shamish is So we shouldn't be able to have hanoah from the light of the menorah. The din is you're not allowed to have pleasure, make use of the light of the candles of the menorah. So at night, we're afraid that if there won't be any other light and the light of the menorah will be lit, someone might read or do something, have hanoah from the light. Therefore, we have to have a shamash, that in case you do have hanoah, you'll have hanoah from the shamash, which is not one of the candles of the menorah. But in the morning, by shachris, when it's light, then why do you need a shamash there? So that's what he asked the Rebbe. And the Rebbe answered him, and I remember I saw the Ksav Yad, because he had showed it to me then, but later this was printed in the Siches and Chelik Yud, in the Hisofas of Chanukah. And this is what the Rebbe answered. Yesh leimar sheyesh eight taimim binyan al-shamash. You could say that there are more other reasons why we have to have a shamash. And according to these reasons, you should have it any time the menorah is lit, not only at night. And he gives the example. Kumei, for instance, another reason. You shouldn't be nichshel of lighting one candle from the other through a kisem, through a little, like a match or something. You shouldn't take light from one to the other. So therefore, we have a shamash. If you have to relight them in a candle, you should be able to use the shamash, not take the fire from one of the other candles which are burning. And it seems from the Rebbe that this applies to the morning also, that you shouldn't light even through a kisem, even through something, a little piece of wood, not to take the fire from the other candle, but you should take it through the shamash. And then he gives another reason. This is dugmas hakein amad lekaneres. This is similar to the kain who would light the menorah. That means the shamash represents the kain who would light the menorah. Just like in the Beis Hamikdash, the kain lit the menorah. So here also there is something that lights the menorah. So that's the union of shamash. And the parentheses, the Rebbe says, shal pizem uve'eres hatmiyeh shal shamash mekeim elamayla menaneres. And this answers the question why the shamash is always higher than the candles of the menorah. For Omer Azal and the Chazal say that there's a simen srofim eindim imal lei. Srofim really goes on malachim. That's the pshat and the pasuk. But this is an emes. Srofim goes on fire, that they stand mimal on top of lei. Now the Rebbe doesn't explain it. What it means is lei is lamed vov, is 36. There are 36 candles that we light throughout the whole yontav of Chanukah. So srofim eimdim mimal lei, there has to be srofim, which means a candle, a fire on top of that. And that reason has nothing to do with the day or the night. So therefore, even during the day, when the menorah is lit in shul by shachris, you should have also a shamash. And then the Rebbe answers v'eid. There are other reasons why we have a shamash, and it seems like those reasons also apply to shachris. And therefore, even though the original reason that he said doesn't apply to the morning when it's light, still you have to have a shamash by shachris when the menorah is lit. In the year Tovshin Lamed, 1969, there was a Farbrengen, the night of the fifth Lichtel of Chanukah. And in that Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke about the Minik Chabad, that we light the menorah by the door, not by the window to the street. And the reason the Rebbe spoke about it, that Farbrengen was known, because that year, Rabbi Rivkin, Rebbe Rivkin, who was one of the elder Chassidim, just moved into the corner building on Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn. And Friday night, when the Rebbe went home, he saw that his menorah was in the window. And that's why the Rebbe spoke about it on the fifth Lichtel. And the Rebbe explained that even though the Gemara says that you have to light the menorah al Pesach Beisei Mibachutz, by the door towards the outside, and then it says in the Braise in the Gemara, brought on the Zichronos, that if you can't do it there, then you should do it by the window. Nevertheless, the meaning of the Rabbeim was, and so too the meaning of all Chassidim will follow the Rabbeim, to light it not by the window, not by the door to the outside, but the door between one room and another, or between the room and a hallway, etc. And they would light it there. And the Rebbe said he saw that by the Frierdiker Rebbe, Sai when he was in America, Sai earlier when he lived in Poland, lived in Lite, in Riga, and there you can't say the reason was because it was dangerous. Mainly in Russia, you could say the reason he didn't light it by the window to the outside because it was dangerous from the communists. But in these places, certainly America, it wasn't dangerous. So therefore, it must be because there is a reason for it. And since the Rabbeim did it, therefore Chassidim do the same way. But the Rebbe said we have to understand why they did it that way. And the Rebbe said that there is a reason al pi remez, al pi sod, but also al pi nigla. He says, because many times when you light it by the window, the place where the window is more than 20 ames from the floor of the outside. And the menorah that's more than 20 ames high is possible. So therefore, if you want to do it for the sake of the people from the outside should see it, it's more than 20 ames, it's possible. Even if the window is lower than 20 ames, but many menorahs have a back. So therefore, how are you going to light it? If you're going to light it with the candles facing the outside, so then the back of the menorah will block it, that the people from inside, the Bnei Bayis, the family members, won't be able to see it. Not only that, when you light the menorah, you'll have to bend over and light the menorah over the back to the outside, which is not so easy, and you got to be careful. Your beard shouldn't catch fire. The Rebbe said, Elamai, you should turn it around the other way. It should face the people inside the house, and the back will be to the outside. So what's the purpose of lighting it by the window? To light it towards the people inside and then turn it around is also not right the way that Rebbe brought out. So therefore, the best way to do it is to light it by the door inside the house, even though it's a door between one room and another, or between the room and a hallway. And the Rebbe said this is all the discussion about the Inyan, and there's more Inyanim about it, but Lepel Mamish Maisarav, that Rabbeim did it that way, and we even find in Svarim that not only our Rabbeim, but other Talmidei Al Shem Tov did it that way, so therefore you have to do it. And the Rebbe said, therefore it's a pelle on anybody who would do differently. And we assume that the Rebbe meant when he saw this in the window of Rabbi Rifkin on the corner house, Eastern Park in Brooklyn. After the Fabrengen, the Rebbe gave over that the Nekuda of this Sicha should be written up in short and given into the Rebbe to be Magia. And the Taka was written up and given into the Rebbe to be Magia. And what the Rebbe did was he added this as a Heisofe to a letter that he wrote. That year, Zeis Chanike, the Rebbe wrote a Kloli Proti. Kloli Proti are these letters that the Rebbe would write the same Loshen to many people, but in every one, to each individual, he would add some detail that was negated to that person. But the general Loshen was for everybody the same. That's called the Kloli Proti. And that was Zeis Chanike Tovshin Lamet. So in that letter, there is a Heisofe called Heisofe La'achar Zman, a Heisofe that's added later, and there's a Nekuda of this Sicha. And this letter, this Sicha, that's hemshech to this letter, is printed in Lekutei Sichas Chelik Hey, page 456, and later on in the Igris of the year Tovshin Lamed, page Reish Samach Dalet. That's where you have this Heisofe La'achazman that the Rebbe added here. But it all came from this Fabrengen of Ner Heide Chanike, Tovshin Lamed. The Psalmon Teibel was one of the Elter Chassidim. He wasn't a big maskel or a big avid, but a very gishmakerid, very sweet person, a very edele person, was very friendly. And a lot of times he would write to the Rebbe different things and the Rebbe would answer him. He's the one that taught the Nigun Ano Avdo, and the Rebbe was very much makar of him, and the Rebbe asked him many times to sing it. So he used to write to the Rebbe many times Divrei Torah, like he would make up a vertel on the parsha and he would write it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe encouraged him to do it, and the Rebbe would answer him. Sometimes the Rebbe would answer him tach, sometimes he'd even make a ha'ara on what he wrote. That's what he told me. But he told me also that he once wrote a Dvar Torah, a vertel that he had made up, and he wrote it on the Gillion, on the side of the Chumash. So he sent in the whole Chumash to the Rebbe, and on the side he pointed out that he made a Dvar Torah, he wrote up a vertel that he made up on a posik. And this time he told me, the Rebbe sent out the Chumash, and the Rebbe wrote, I don't remember the exact wording that the Rebbe wrote, but the point was, as mishreibt nicht auf kein Chumash, that on a Chumash you don't write. Now, I don't know if he meant on any sefer, because we do know that people used to write ha'oris and chidusha Torah on the gilyonis on the sides of the Gemaras and other svarim. So maybe he only means a Chumash. But this is what he told me, that the Rebbe wrote to him, and I don't remember the exact wording, but the Rebbe wrote to him, as mishreibt nicht auf kein Chumash. Tovshin Chav Gimel, Chanukah, the first day of Chanukah was Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev. So there was a Fabrengen Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev. It was anyway Shabbos and Vorachim Tevis. And at the end of the Fabrengen, the Rebbe said that he wants to be made that they should Fabreng every night of Chanukah. There should be a Fabrengen. And he spoke about the Mailav of Fabrengen. So there was arranged a Fabrengen in 770 every night of Chanukah. The thing was that year Nittel was one of the nights of Chanukah. So the Rebbe was asked, I don't know by who, maybe by the ones I arranged for bringing, by the yeshiva, or by Tzach, or Merkaz, or the Maskiros, I don't know exactly, but someone asked the Rebbe whether to Fabring also on the night of Nittel. Since Nittel you're not allowed to learn, so should it be a Fabrengen? And the Rebbe answered, that's what we heard then, the Rebbe answered, yes, there should be a Fabrengen, but should only speak in Yonim that you're allowed to speak on Nitl. And I remember, Taka, there was a Farbrengen in Cheder Sheni, Nitl night, which was Chanukah, and Reb Nissen was Farbrengen then. And I even remember what Reb Nissen was saying. He was speaking about just the general inyan of Hivdilonim in Atayim. He told the story that when they were in a city, when the yeshiva was in a certain time, in a certain city, and it was in the shul. So one night was a regular night, just no special yom at the Pag or anything. The Bochum decided, Lama they got say there's Lama Farbrengen. So they sat down and they started Farbrengen at night in the shul. But what do you talk about? It's not a special day, so you have no theme to talk about. So they were talking about stam that we have done him in Atayim, was Mezanya Nieden, the Meile that we have done him in Atayim. And that's how they Farbrengen the whole night, till the morning. In the morning, people started coming to shul already. They walked in, they saw the Bochum sitting Farbrengen. They were wondering, if no yom at the Pag or nothing. So they asked the Bochum, what's the sibur for the Farbrengen? So one of the Bochum answered, you don't know? Hivdolonim in Atayim. It was so posh because they say angekab geworden throughout the night Farbrengen. This is what I remember stam from Reb Nissen was Farbrengen. But the point I'm trying to make is that they asked the Rebbe whether to Farbrengen Nitl night, since the Rebbe said to Farbrengen every night, and he said yes, aber man soll reden die Inyonim, was man reden Nitl. In the year Tovshin Chov Beis, which is 1962, I still learned in Bedford and Dean. Just still a young boy. We, myself and the other Chaverim from the class, we used to Drezach a lot in 770. At night, after we finished our learning there, we would come to 770 and Drezach around with the Bochrim. It was Nitl night, Tovshin Chov Beis. There's no Seder at night, so we went to Drezach in 770. While we're studying in 770, we see that Rabbi Groner is taking the tape recorder. Those days there were very big tape recorders with big reels, and he's taking it into the Rebbe's room. So we're standing on the side and watching. We saw him take it into the Rebbe's room and start the tape. We couldn't see that. He walked in the Rebbe's room, closed the door, but we heard that the tape started, and he walked out and went into Maskiros. So we, as kids, went over outside the Rebbe's door to listen to what's happening. So we heard the tape going. This was a tape of the big gathering of Yutas Kislev in Kfar Chabad. And the Rebbe was listening to the speeches. So we're standing outside the room, outside the door, and listening to the tape, and it was very easy to listen. Those days, the Maskirus, the Anid Natachten door was always open, so we were able to stand there. And we were kids, and we're standing outside, and we heard. So we heard one of the speeches, I don't know who it was. Then they were singing Nigen Pada B'Sholem. The Rebbe fast forwarded it, probably because there's no reason for him to listen. I guess he wanted to hear what was said, but there's no reason for him to listen to the Nigen as they were singing, and maybe also because it's Psukim, I didn't want to listen to the Psukim and Nitl, I don't know. Then he heard another speech, and then Rebbe Nochem Goldschmidt was chazening a Maimer, so the Rebbe also fast forwarded, probably also for the two reasons. First of all, it's Divrei Torah, but besides that, what's the reason for him to listen to the Maimer? He just wanted to hear what was going on, and then he listened further. We were still kids, young kids, not babies, but we were 13, 14 years old, and we were standing outside. We made some noise. And we saw, as we were standing there, the handle of the Rebbe's room started turning, which means that the Rebbe was opening the door. So right away, as soon as we saw that, we ran down the steps, because outside by the gate in the Gadit Natachten, there's a staircase. Now it's probably locked, but then it was open. So we ran down, and we saw from far that the Rebbe opened the door, stuck out his head to see who's there, and closed the door. Because we were still kids, didn't understand, and we probably said something, and we spoke a little bit louder, so the Rebbe opened the door. But in the meantime, we were able to hear what was going on in the room, that the Rebbe listened to the Farbrengen, this gathering that happened in Kfar Chabad on Yutas Kislev, and certain things he skipped. The year that a group of us started working on preparing the Siches for the Rebbe to be Magiach for Lakut Siches was Tovshin Lamed Gimel, 1973. That year, we learned in Kollel. It was just a few years after we were married, and we learned in Kollel. In Kollel, a lot of the learning was concerning those halachas that have to do when after you get married. And one of the issues that was discussed very much was a certain halacha, how you have to calculate it. The halacha of Vestafloge. How do you have to calculate it? Because there's a big machlokes between the Alter Rebbe and other poskim. And the question was whether we only followed the Alter Rebbe or we also followed the other opinions of the other poskim. And even amongst the Lubavitcher Rabbanim, there was a debate. Some said we only followed the Alter Rebbe, and some say no, we should follow the other poskim also. Now, someone suggested that we should ask the Rebbe, but we knew that the Rebbe wouldn't answer, because usually if you'd ask the Rebbe a shaila in halacha, the Rebbe would send you to Rabbanim. That's all. So we knew that wasn't a neitzeh. But since we worked on the Likutei Sichos that year, we just happened to have an opportunity. It came to the Sicha of Parshas Va'eschanan, that we were preparing for the Shabbos Parshas Va'eschanan for Likutei Sichos. And there it talks about these inyanim. Not specifically about this shaila, but it talks about the sugya, the same sugya. And here we thought we were able to ask a Rebbe a question which would clarify how the Rebbe holds b'negei the shaila that we had. Because the Seder was that we would prepare a Sicha, but if there was a question that we had in connection to the inyanim of the Sicha, a lot of times we would ask the Rebbe. And after the Rebbe would answer, in many instances, that answer would go into as a hor in the Sicha, because that was the Rebbe's answer. So here there was a shaila that we had that was connected to the Sicha, but it was basically also connected to the inyan of Vest Aflogya. And the way the shaila would be answered would have been a real clarity what the Rebbe holds, whether we have to follow just the Alter Rebbe or we follow the other poskim also. So what we did was we prepared a Sicha, and we also wrote the shaila. It was a long shaila on a separate page, typed page, and we gave in the Sicha together with the shaila, waiting that the Rebbe will answer it, and we'll see. And I have to be honest that one of the reasons we wrote in the shaila was because we wanted to see the Rebbe's answer, b'negeya, how to behave when it comes to the calculation of this Vest Aflogya. So we gave him the shaila, waiting for the Rebbe to answer, and then we knew that he'll answer, and it'll be a clear thing. According to his answer, we'll know how we have to do. When the Sicha came out, the Rebbe sent out the whole Sicha. It was Migia the Sicha, and he sent out that page of the shaila also, but he didn't answer anything. All he did was, with a pencil, he made a line across the whole page, diagonal from one corner of the page to the other, made a line on the whole page, and that's it. Didn't answer, didn't say anything. So from there we saw that if the Rebbe doesn't want to answer shaylas in halacha, then there's no chokhmas, there's nothing you could do. As much as we tried and we thought this way we will get an answer, but if the Rebbe didn't want to answer, he didn't answer, and therefore we don't have clarity from the Rebbe b'negei the sinyan, and it remains the way it was before. Concerning the letters Nun Gimel Hey Shin that are written on the dreidel, I'd like to mention that there is a Sicha in Likutei Sichos, Chelik Yud Beis, page 33, concerning Shabbos HaGodel, where the Rebbe mentions it. And this is what it says there. In the Sicha, the Rebbe says that Tosfos brings in Shabbos Daf Pei Zayin Amud Beis, b'negei Shabbos HaGodel, that a Nes Godel happened there. Nasa be Nes Godel, and Alter Rebbe Zichronos brings it also. And the Rebbe goes on to ask, why is there a special Nes Godel? What happened on Shabbos HaGodel, that the Pcherim, the firstborn of Mitzrayim, fought with their own fathers and the other Mitzrayim to let the Yidden out, and they killed each other. That's a very big Nes. And the Rebbe asks in the Sicha why it's a Nes Godel, and he goes on to have a whole beer why it's called a Nes Godel. So there, in Ha'orah 5, there's a Shul Hagili. On the bottom of that, it says like this. Ulahoyer, I want to comment, the Rebbe says, Ashegam b'negei lechanike, also concerning Chanike, Amri Inshe, people say, Betam haminig, for the reason of the minig, Shebesvivein charuses or aces, Nun Gimel Haishin, that on the dreidel are carved out the letters Nun Gimel Haishin, Kiheim Rosh Tevis, the Rebbe says, because they are the Rosh Tevis, the abbreviation of the four words, Nes Godel Hoyoshom. A big Nes was there. And the Rebbe is Meir brings this in concerning Shabbos HaGodel. That just like by Shabbos HaGodel we say there's a Nes Godel, so he says Lahoyer, right here also we have Nes Godel that we have on the dreidel. I just want to mention that in the first Haggoah, when the Rebbe was Magia the Sicha, the words that were written there said like this, something like this, I don't remember exactly, but something like Lahoyer, Asher Gam b'negei lechanike, Tam haminig shebesvivein charuses or aces Nun Gimel Haishin, and he goes on Kihem Rosh Tevis Nes Godel Hoyashom. The second Haggoah, the Rebbe added the words Amri Inshe. The first Haggoah didn't say that people say that this is the reason for the letters Nun Gimel Haishin because it means Nes Godel Hoyashom. The second Haggoah, the Rebbe added that Amri Insha, that people say that this is the reason for the letters Nun Gimel Hey Shin, because it means Nes Gadol HaYashom. So it seems like that originally it seemed like that this was a definite thing, and when it came to the second Agod, the Rebbe decided that doesn't really have a makir. I'm just saying the pshat doesn't really have a makir. So it's Amri Insha that people should say, but that's how it was originally. It didn't say the word Amri Insha, and later on the Rebbe changed it and put in the words Amri Insha that people say. But anyway, whichever way it is, from this sikh it seems that the Nes Godel that happened at Chanukah, which are written on the dreidel, has a connection to the reason why Shabbos HaGodel is called Shabbos HaGodel, because of the Nes Godel that happened there. And we have to look into the sikha to see, after the Rebbe explains the whole beer, why Shabbos HaGodel we consider a Nes Godel, a big Nes, a special big Nes, more than a regular Nisim, how we could explain that beer concerning Chanukah also, even though they seem to be different in Yonim. But the Rebbe does, since he's mayor here, when he talks about why Shabbos HaGodel, we say there was a Nes Godel, and he brings in that by Chanukah and the dreidel it says Nes Godel, so must be some connection, and we have to work on this to see how the connection is. In the Chovs, I used to give a shir Chassidus for Bochrim, used to learn in the yeshiva RJJ, Rebbe Yankiv Yosef, in the east side. Amongst the Bochrim, there were two brothers called Stern. They lived in this side, they learned in RJJ, and they actually lived in the same co-op, in the same floor as Rebbe Moshe Feinstein. They had a shaykhus to Lubavitch even before they came to my shir. They used to come to the Fabrenga sometimes, even on Shabbos. They even told me that they once asked Rebbe Moshe if they're allowed to cross the bridge on Shabbos. So Rebbe Moshe asked them, where do you want to go? So they said, to a Fabrengen of the Rebbe. So right away he said, in Megdgen, you're allowed to go. But anyway, they used to come to my shir Chassidus. I remember once by Fabrengen, when they lost their father, the Rebbe told them to say L'chaim. But because they learned in my shir, I got them a Yechidus that they went in to the Rebbe. And the Yechidus was Thursday night, Hey Oder Sheni Tovshin Chav Zayin. And when they came out, they told me over what the Rebbe said to them. It was a long Yechidus, and I wrote it down right after they told me what it was. And since it's a long Yechidus, I would like to repeat what they said, but I'll have to break it up in two parts. And obviously, I don't take achrayas on all the words that they said. First of all, I probably didn't remember everything. Besides that, it's something that they said. I wasn't there, but I'll just repeat what they said. They wrote a zettel, and in the zettel they asked 5 questions. One question is, what is the Rebbe's shita concerning Eretz Yisrael? Is it Aschal to the Gula? Is it the beginning of the Gula already? And part of that question was, are you allowed to go to vote there? And can you be a minister in the government? A second question is, why Chassidim dam late? Third question was, when you get a college, are you allowed to go to college? A fourth question was, how come other Chassidim don't do Yefutza Meinesecha Chutza, they don't spread Chassidus? And the fifth question is, when you get a beard, they didn't have beards, and they asked the Rebbe, is it important to have a beard? When the Rebbe looked at the zettel, the first thing he said, you have 5 questions here, Keneged the Chamisha Chumsha Torah, Keneged the 5 Chumoshim. And on each question that you asked, you're able to write a whole sefer. And then the Rebbe started answering them. First he said, concerning Eretz Yisrael, the answer is that it's not as Chalta de Gula, because the Rambam writes befeirish, as when is the coming of Mashiach, when there will be a person, a Yid, a Yira Shamayim, Hege B'Teira learns Teira, and he's going to force all the Yidden to do Teira mitzvahs. It's not going to be like today, but it's going to be that if a Yid doesn't want to put on tefillin, or a Yid doesn't want to make a sit in the sukkah, Mashiach will force him to do it. And even then, it's only a suffix if this is Mashiach. Then he's going to build a Bis Hamikdash, and even then, it's still a suffix if this is Mashiach. Then he's going to be Mekabetz Goliath, he's going to gather all the Yidden from all over, and then everyone's going to know that this is the beginning of the Gula. Now, I don't know if he had a lotion, this is the beginning of Gula, this is the Gula, but for sure, if this doesn't happen, then it's not Aschal to the Gula. They asked the Rebbe, but they heard that Reb Arne Soloveitchik says differently. So the Rebbe said, in Medrash there could be Shivim Ponim La Teira. In discussions, in learning, you can have 70 different ways in learning Teira, but Halacha is clear. And the Halacha, the Rambam writes clear, and you can't say any other way. And then the Rebbe continued. The Rambam brings different madregis in stages in the coming of Mashiach, and it's still all a suffix, and as long as we're not sure that this is Mashiach, it's not Aschal to the Gula. This is Al-Pi Halacha. Then the Rebbe said, Al-Pi Logic, the explanation is, since we say, Mipnei Chatoinu Galinu Ma'artzeinu, that we were chased out of our land, we went to Golis because of our sins, So the goal is, the sins are the cause. And the effect is Golina Martzeinu. So as long as the Chatoenu is still here, the cause is still here, so the effect is still here. We're still in Golus. And he says, now we still have that. Now we still have that there are still sins around. And he said, Madoch, in the time of the Ameroyim and the Rishonim, there was still Chatoenu and there was still a Golus, certainly now. And the Rebbe said, for instance, Rabban Soloveitchik Zayde, Reb Chaim Brisker, he was definitely greater than him in Sitkes. And even then there was still Chatoyim. So now there's still certain Chatoyim and even more. So how can you say that now there is no more Golus? That means that because that now there is no more Chatoyim. That is not true. Concerning whether you're allowed to hold a position, so he said, if it's nothing to do with the government, like a street cleaner, then it doesn't matter. But if you're a minister and you have an opinion, and this is Heipech HaShulchan Aruch, it's against the Shulchan Aruch, because you can be part of doing things, making laws which are against the Shulchan Aruch. And even if you're a shliach from 2 million Yidden, ein shliach al dvar aveira, you can't be a shliach to do an aveira, the shliach doesn't count. Unless you're there and everything that they say, you always protest, you always scream against it. But otherwise, you can't be. But then they said that the Rebbe said that if it's trying to get tevis, trying to take things that will help Yiddishkeit, maybe you're allowed. I don't know those words exactly if he said. But concerning going to vote, elections, so the Rebbe said it's good, it's okay, even though there are different opinions, but since it could help Yiddishkeit, then it's a good idea to go vote. Concerning that Chassidim daven late, so the Rebbe said like this, Krishma, you have to takip Chassidim, read it on time, bisman. But Tefillah, what the Zman of Tefillah is till the end of the 4th hour, so that Chassidim takadu daven later. What is the reason? Because the Rambam says, and the Alter Rebbe brings it in Shulchan Aruch, that the kavanah of davening, if you don't have it, then your davening is bottle. And the Rebbe explained, it doesn't mean Pirush HaMilah, it doesn't mean if you didn't think the meaning of the words. But if you don't have the kavanah klolis of dalif miyatayim, the kavanah klolis that you realize that you're standing in front of the Eibishter, so the Rambam says is tefillah betela, the tefillah is bottle. So what's going to gain if you're going to daven on time, but you won't have the proper kavanah, b'shas davening? You will think about your business, you think about your grocery, you think about your shoemaker, and then you'll really, al-pidin, you'll have to daven over again. B'meile, what is the purpose? That's why Chassidim daven later. The rest of the Yechidus will be in the next broadcast. The continuation of the Yechidus of the Stern brothers. The next question was concerning college. So the Rebbe said concerning college, so we know what the Chazal say on the Pasuk, V'dibarta bom, you should speak in them, meaning in words of Torah. So the Chazal say, V'dibarta bom, v'loi b'dvarim b'teilim. You're not allowed to speak in dvarim b'teilim. V'loi b'chochim schätzeni. It's not in secular study, secular chochmas. Unless it's for a profession. So just like there's a shoemaker or a tailor, there's a businessman, so you could have a professional lawyer. So if you do it only for that reason, but the learning itself is a TOEFL secondary to the profession, and your whole purpose is only because you want to have make a living easier, then it's okay. But if you go there because you want to be part of society, and you want to have culture, and you want to know about Shakespeare and about Einstein, etc., and you should be able to comment on every discussion that there is, that is bittul Torah, and you're not allowed to go. But if it's for a profession, then you're allowed, but only if it's for that reason only. But if it's for that reason, and in the meantime you also want to take part in the other things, then you're not allowed to go already. And then the Rebbe told him a story. A fruma lady with a shait levim, her husband is with a beard, so the Rebbe said, came to me, and her son was in high school. So I asked her, what does she plan to do when he's going to finish high school? So she answered that she plans he should go to college. Because medar doch sein a mensch, you have to be a mensch. So the Rebbe says, I asked her, what's wrong if he's going to be a goen, and he's going to know Shasu Poskim? So she answered, and the Rebbe started smiling, he'll be a goen, but he won't be a mensch. And he's not going to know about Shakespeare, he's not going to know when Shakespeare was born. So the Rebbe says, I asked her, and when Rava was born, you do know? In other words, is that a wrong to think? No. So she said, no, I don't know. Then the Rebbe asked her, and when Julius Caesar was born, you do know? So she answered, I never met him. But the Rebbe seems like tried to show that even to her it's not important. So why does she care that if he's going to know about Shakespeare or not? I think that's the pshat, according to what they said, the Rebbe said. So the Rebbe said, for this reason, just to be able to be a mensch, as she said, and to be part of society, and to be able to answer all the questions and discuss everything that people talk about, for that you're not allowed to go. Concerning the other question, why Chassidim don't do, other Chassidim don't do in Afot Samayonis. So first the Rebbe said, you got to ask them. I'm not starting up with them. But the Pashtas, the Rebbe said, you could say, because the Magid had many Talmidim, every Talmid took the Torah of the Mizricha Magid in a different way. So the Alter Rebbe took it in the form of Harchove and Hafotze, in the width and in the spreading of it. But the other Talmidim, they didn't take it in the form of Harchove. They took it maybe Ba'amkes, deep, but not in Harchove. And the Rebbe says, since they didn't take it B'Harchove, that's why by them they don't have this union of spreading Chassidus. And the Rebbe says, it's al derech, the difference between if you learn Gemara with Rashi or Gemara with Tosfos. When you learn with Rashi, you know the pshat of the Gemara. You might know the depth of the pshat, but all you know is the pshat. But Tosfos, and Rashi and Tosfos both knew how to learn. Tosfos asks a kasha and gives a teretz in the form of Harchove. So the same thing here, the Alter Rebbe took the Torah of the Magid and Harchove and in the form of Afotze. And concerning the union of a beard, the Rebbe said there is a machlekes and a sheinim there. That's the way they said it. And there are sheinim that say that you must have a beard. And the Tzemach Tzedek paskins like them lahalocha. Now, Pi Kabbalah, we know that the beard is connected to the Yud Gimel Tikkun Dikne, which is Mamshe brings down the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. We know what that is. And the Tzemach Tzedek even says that the 13 words of the Pasuk V'hu Rachum are connected the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. And therefore, Al Pi Kabbalah, you should have a beard. Then they asked, what about if it'll help your business not to have a beard? So the Rebbe said, Im kein over self, so there's no end. In other words, you can't do that. But then they asked, how come there are many Litvish who don't have beards? So the Rebbe said, or they hold like the other Rishonim, or they feel that they don't have to come onto the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. But we do know that we have to come onto the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. We know we have to come onto Hashem, Kil Racham V'chan, etc., etc. So we must have a beard. Another bocher who was a Talmud in RJJ and he came to my Chassidus was a bocher called Krupnik. And he became very niskarev through the shir, so much so that he started growing a beard while he was learning in RJJ. So he told me that the Rosh Hashiva called him over and told him that it's not nice, he should shave his beard. It's not right for him to have a beard. And then he added that since this was in the 60s, in the Chovs, there were a lot of hippies, and the hippies used to have beards. So he said, if you have a beard, you look like one of the hippies. And b'meile, you're even causing Gechil Hashem, because you're joining with them, you look like a hippie. I got him to go into Yichidus of the Rebbe, and I was standing outside the door by the Ganet Natacht when he went in, and after he came out, he told me over what the Rebbe said, and again, this is something that he said, so we got to rely on what he said, but this is what he told me then. That the Rebbe told him, Benegei the beard, it's a Tzedek, that Tzemach Tzedek says that you have to have a beard. So he said that I said to shave your beard. The Rebbe also told him that Al Pi Kabbalah, it's connected to Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, and that's why you should have a beard. But then the Rebbe said to him, you're right that your Rosh Hashiva said that the hippies have beards, and maybe if you have a hippie, it's a Chil Hashem. So the Rebbe said, Sifarkert, Eib zwischen the hippies is do Ayid, und hat abord, tuter mit einer Veire weniger. That if there's a Yid amongst the hippies and he's wearing a beard, so he's doing it with one Aveda less. In other words, this is that the hippies are wearing beards, the Rebbe turned it around. That one said that it's a Chil Hashem. And the Rebbe said, Rebbe, the hippie himself, if he's a Yid, should wear a beard. So it's not a Chil Hashem, it's fakert. It's a one Aveda less that he's doing. So the Rebbe took what that Rosh Hashiva said, negative against the beard, and the Rebbe turned it around and turned it to Lamal Yusah. Reb Zalman Shimon Dvorkin Olav Sholem, who was the Rav of the Lubavitcher community in Crown Heights, once told me that he got a shaila from the Rebbe, that the Rebbe sent that he should answer the shaila. Somebody sent the Rebbe a piece of rock from the Kaisel Hamarovi. It seems like a piece chipped off, and the person took it and he sent it to the Rebbe as a present. And the Rebbe asked, is he allowed to keep it? And Rebbe Zalman Shimon explained to me that the shaila was, since the Kaisel Hamarovi is Hegdish, and you're not allowed to have a no from Hegdish, and if you have a no from Hegdish, you're male by Hegdish. There's a din that you're not allowed to make any use for anything that's Hegdish. And this is part of the Harab, it's connected to the Harabayis, whatever, it's a shaila of Hegdish if you're allowed to use it. So the Rebbe asked if you're allowed to keep it. So he said, he answered to the Rebbe that Mi'ikir Hadin, you're probably allowed. Why? because even though it's Hegdesh, there's a din, Bo Pritzim v'chalaluha, that after the Churban Beis HaMikdash and they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, they were machalal, they took away the Kedusha of the Hegdesh, or Mele, there is no more Hegdesh there, and Mele, you're allowed to have a noah from it. Nevertheless, he said to the Rebbe that he thinks the Rebbe should not keep it. And the Rebbe took his answer, and the Rebbe Taka sent it back to the person who sent it to him. When the Rebbe was Magia Lekutei Sichos, many times he would take the opportunity, if it fit into the Sikha, to write something very practical, something that was very negay at that time. And I'm going to give two examples. One example is in Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Yud Gimel, Parshas Bolok. This was a Sikha that came out in the Likud in Tovshin Lamed Gimel. And the Sikha talks about the Posik Mateva Alecha Yankiv that Bilam said, how good are your tents, Yidden? And Rashi says he meant that he saw how the doors of their tents are not one across each other because of tznius. And the Rebbe explains the whole Rashi and all the inyonim, and then he says what the lesson from here is, the importance of tznius. And he said also, we see from here that not like some people think that only major things connected to tznius are important. But when it's minor things, it's not so important to be careful. So here we see that even when they talked about Matevo Oyhalecha Yaakov, Oyhalecha is a tent is a temporary dwelling, and even here it's important tznius. And then the Rebbe continued in the Sikha that a person might still listen to the Yetzer Hara who says, when is it so important? Only when you're in a permanent situation. But when you're in a temporary place, then it's not so important to be medagdik so much, to be careful so much in tznius and in every little bit of tznius. So the lesson is that even in that you have to be very careful. So on these words, what the Rebbe says in the Sikha, that one might think that if you're in a temporary place, it's okay, the Rebbe wrote the Ha'ara. And these are the words that he wrote. The kan hamokim lahadgish. And now I want to stress something that's important for this time of the year, because this sikh is in summertime. And he says these words, those who are mekel, and the words makilim he puts in quotations, in many inyonim of tzviyas, in the summertime, especially when they're found in a temporary dwelling outside of the city. It means when you're in the country, people think you could be mekel. And some even say, echte v'oshuv. Gemara says a lashon, echte v'oshuv. Someone shouldn't say, I will sin, but I could do tshuva. But the Rebbe used the lashon, the play on words, echte v'oshuv, I will sin, and oshuv, I will return, meaning do tshuva, when I come back to the city. A person shouldn't say that. And the Rebbe continues and says, this is negaya to the behavior of men also, certainly to women, because each one of the women is called an akeres habayis. And then the Rebbe says there's much more to say about it, but this is not the place. When the Rebbe wrote this ha'ara, he wrote on the side, to us, to the Vad, he said that make this ha'ara, put it in a place that will be the most obvious and people will see it more, they'll stress it more. And the Rebbe gave two options. Or it should be printed separately in the back of the Likud. The Likud was the full Likud of the Sikh, and the back, make it separate, that it should be seen as separate. Or put it as ha'ara on the bottom of the page, but put it in bold words. And we talked about it and we decided that we want to put it that way, that will attract more attention. So in the Sikha, in Chelik Yud Gimel, page 84, there's a ha'ara here in bold words, which is usually not there, but this is in bold words because the Rebbe wanted to take the opportunity, people should be aware. Another thing was, this was Tovshin Lamed Ches, which was right after the Rebbe had a heart attack, Parshas Noach. So the svara was maybe not to give in the Sikha for the Rebbe to be Magia. The decision, the Rebbe wanted it till we gave it in. The people who wrote it gave it in. And the Rebbe, while he was laying in bed, wrote something very strong, not just Magia. He wrote not just a paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs with his own handwriting. And he was doing it while laying in bed. When I saw the ksav, you could see this ksav was shaky because he wrote it while he was laying in bed. And this is what he writes. And I'm going to read it, not in the original Yiddish, but I'm going to read it in English. This is in Chelik, in Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Tesvav, page 43. And this is what the Rebbe says. In the Sikha, the Rebbe talks about that science, secular science, before Mashiach, will get closer to the understanding of the unity of Hashem. And then the Rebbe says like this, but at this point I have to bavorin, even though it's obvious by itself, it's self-understood, that all this that I'm saying here about what they will get to, the science will get to, has no connection to the question about learning in college or in the university and kayetze bezeh. Because over there it's a isur chomor. He says it's a strong aveire. And it's a sakone. Then the Rebbe says, Chamira sakante mi yisure. A sakone, a danger, is worse than an isur. And the Isur, there's a sakona there and the Isur there. Because the whole atmosphere and the whole ashkofe of the Daled Ames in these institutions nowadays is absorbed full of denial of kfire, denial in Ashgacha Protis of the Eibishter. According to them, there is not one thing or one power that could get mixed into the way the world runs and the rules of the running of the world. In other words, there's no Eibishter. This is accepted there as a self-understood thing that you don't even have to prove it. And this is the foundation that Rebbe says, and he underlines the word Yesod, foundation, to the whole studying these places, that they don't even have to mention it, because that's self-understood by them. And in most of the times, they learn Tinyonim of Apikurses, believing in Avodah Zorah, V'chulu, etc., and underline word, etc. And then the Rebbe says, in Ruben Kekulam, in most of these places, there is no boundaries of embarrassment or tznius. They even laugh, and they try to make litzones, fun, of those that are careful with it. And Adarabe, anybody who is less tznius, more pritzes, is even greater, V'chulu. And then the Rebbe says, it's known, the outrageous situation there in the campuses. He says the word campuses, dormitories, places where you walk, etc. And the Rebbe says, I don't want to go further into something that's very outrageous in such a terrible way. And then he says, but someone could have a taina, and the word taina is in quotation, the famous taina, that he or she, it won't hurt them, and he'll be able to withstand the nisyanis, all the hardships. So we know the simple answer. The simple answer is that even a tzaddik gomor, even the last day of his life, the last day of his 120th year on this world, in the beginning of the day, before he even davens, has to ask the Eibishter, Alt v'yeinu l'dein soin, don't bring me to a test, because that's a problem. So no one could say that I don't mind if I'll have a test. And then the Rebbe says, V'yesh l'hayrich kama v'kama v'ein kama kemi. I could even say more and more, but this is not the place. So we see here what was on the Rebbe's mind, and he took the opportunity when the Sikha spoke about science, to write while he's in bed, after the heart attack, to write all this that I said was written in Yiddish by the Rebbe himself. And there are other places where the Rebbe did such things, but I just gave two examples. Chamishosha B'Shvat, Tovshin Lamed Aleph, 1971, the Rebbe went to the Eil. Now, those years, it wasn't so common that after the Rebbe would come back for the Eil, there should be a sudden Fabrengen. Later years, it was more common. But those years, it wasn't so common. But Lepeil, when the Rebbe came back from the Eil, he said there's going to be a Fabrengen. And you can imagine what happened in 770. There were no cell phones. So the only communication was by running home or going to the payphones. So everyone was running to the houses to tell the people that there's a Fabrengen. The payphone on the corner of Eastern Parkway and Kingston and the payphone inside 770 were full of lines. And it's like a ton of Tishon Avenk, as they say, 770 gangen afreder. But Lepeil, they went downstairs, they prepared a place, and there was a Fabrengen. By the Fabrengen, the Teichen of what the Rebbe was speaking about is that since they give, it says in Posik, Ki ha'odam eitz hasodeh, a person is compared to the tree, and Chamishasa B'Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah for trees, and the Gemara says this goes on the Talmud Chacham, and a person who learns Torah. So obviously Chamishasa B'Shvat is connected to learning Torah. And therefore, the Rebbe said, from now on we have to start this inyan of conquering the world with Livad HaTorah, to kavish the world, to conquer the world with learning Torah, and stress the importance of learning Torah, and that should be the inyan that we should stress from now on. And for months, many Fabrengens, the Rebbe would refer back to this Sikha of Chamishasa B'Shvat, the importance of learning Torah, and he would say, V'im yod geret Chamishasa B'Shvat, different Fabrengens, many months. Some of them are even printed, little bit, mugedike parts of it, in the Sikhes, and the Hisofes of Chelik Vav, and Chelik Zayin of Chelik Ches, all about the union of learning, stressing the union of Kavish to conquer the world with Torah that started on Chamishasa B'Shvat. One of the Fabrengens later, I think it was Shabbos Parshas Tzav, which is Shabbos HaGodel. I don't remember for sure, but I think that's what it was. The Rebbe also spoke about it, and he said when the Bochim and everyone, they should strengthen the learning Torah. But in that Fabrengen, the Rebbe told what happened Chamishasa B'Shvat. He says, Chamishasa B'Shvat, he was by the Eil. And by the Eil, tzach mir gestupt Fabrengen. While I was there, I had an urge to Fabreng. But I didn't know whether I should give in to the urge or not. Lepeil, I decided to give in to the urge, and therefore there was a Fabrengen Chamishasa B'Shvat. But since there was nothing special to talk about, Kiviyochel, I guess, that other Fabrengens, when there was a sudden Fabrengen, so then there was always some kind of special theme that the Rebbe spoke about, some kind of special Miftzah that the Rebbe came out was something stressed, something special. But the Rebbe said here there was nothing special that he was supposed to speak about. So he said, so what should I speak about? Since the Gemara says that Chamishosa B'Shvat, which means trees are connected to people who learn Torah, and Chamishosa B'Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah to trees, so I decided to speak about conquering the world with Torah. But the Rebbe said, a while later, there was a discussion in the United States government to start drafting Yeshiva Bochum to the army. And there was a big tumult. And the Rosh Hashivas and all the Rabbonim started talking, now we have to do something about it. So there was a big asifa that was there were the Rosh Hashivas, the Litvish Rosh Hashivas were there, and Chassidish Rebbes were there, etc., etc. And the main theme of that asifa was that we have to see to strengthen learning Torah. Since there's a gzeira against learning Torah, we have to strengthen learning Torah. And they had kindness why Lubavitch didn't participate. Which they meant was why the Rebbe didn't come to the Asifa like other Rebbes and other Gdolim came to the Asifa. I do think that Rasha Gepes went as a representative of Lubavitch Yeshiva, I'm not sure, but what they would expect is that the Rebbe himself, so to speak, should come. The Rebbe didn't mention those words, but that's the Teichon of what was. And they had kindness why Lubavitch didn't participate in this whole Asifa where we're talking about strengthening Torah. So the Rebbe says, what we did was even better. Before the Gzeira came yet, we already spoke about strengthening Limud Torah. The Rebbe was Magdim Refuah L'Makeh that before the Gzeira came, he already Chamishosar B'Shvat spoke about strengthening the learning Torah. So the Rebbe says they can't have tainas because we did it even more, and that was what happened on Chamishosar B'Shvat when the Rebbe verbringt. But the Rebbe said one thing, one heroa, so to speak, that he took to himself from here is that from now on, since he saw here that when he got an urge to verbring, and he did verbring, and what he spoke about was Limud Torah, happened to be something that was very important, that was the Refuah before the Maki, before the Gzeira. So he took the lesson from here that from now on, if I'll ever have an urge to verbring, I will give in to my urge and I will verbring. In Tovshin Chov Dalet, which is in 1964, in one of the Fabrengens after Yud Shvat, so I remember Rav Moshe Dubinsky, who was sitting by the Fabrengen, his place was in front of the Rebbe, and the shura, the table that was in front of the Rebbe, he always used to sit there. So I remember in the middle of the Fabrengen, he went out of his place, he went up to the bima, got up, and said to the Rebbe, in front of the bim, in front of the Rebbe's table, and he says to the Rebbe that he's asking the Rebbe to be magia the maimer that the Rebbe said Yud Shvat. The Bossi Legani, the Rebbe said Yud Shvat. And the Rebbe looked at him, and the Rebbe said, "Und die alle andere Mamorim seid ihr schon klar? And all the other Mamorim, do you know? Are you clear with it? Do you know it? Do you know them already?" And he said, "Yeah." And the Rebbe looked at him and was not satisfied with his answer. And I think he said to him, "L'chaim v'livrocha," and that's it. And the Rebbe was not Magia the Maimer, but the Rebbe was not satisfied with his answer. I think at that time we thought that what the Rebbe meant was all the other built-in Mugim Maimorim. Are you clear that now you need Afkem Mugidik Maimer? He took it, and maybe he's right, that the Rebbe meant all the other Mugidik Maimorim, and there were not too many Mugidik Maimorim, only a few. There was only the three Bossi Leganis, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and the Yeshevas Beganim, and then the Maim Rabbi Tovshin Yud Zayin. So he took it that the Rebbe meant the Mugidik Maimorim, and he answered yes, but the Rebbe didn't accept that answer, and the Rebbe is not Magia. But we heard then that the reason he did it was because the Maimer Bossi Legani Tovshin Yud Gimel, one of the reasons the Rebbe was Magia, because he asked for it. There's also the same thing that after Yud Shvat, I don't know which Fabrengen, he asked the Rebbe to Magia the Bossi Legani, and the Rebbe asked him the same question. I wasn't there, so I don't know, but that's what we heard then. The Maimorim, the other Maimorim, are you clear? And he said yes. And Lepel Mamesh, the Rebbe was Magia that Maimer. It took a while, I think, towards closer to the end of the year later, but I don't know exactly when. The Rebbe was Magia Tovshin Yud Gimel Bossi Legani, and the Rebbe even had it sent out to different people. And to one of the people the Rebbe wanted the Maimer to be sent was to Rav Moshe Dubinsky, because he was one of the people that, I guess, asked the Rebbe, like we said, to be Magia the Maimer, and the Rebbe was Magia. So since he accomplished it, he was Matzliach, Tovshin Yud Gimel, so he thought he'll try again, Tovshin Chov Dalet. So he tried again, but this time it wasn't Matzliach, and the Rebbe was not Magia the Maimer. in the Chovs, when the Rebbe would come out to Kriya upstairs in the shul, so once by Kriya, after when the Rebbe got his Aliyah for Shlishi, after the Rebbe finished his Aliyah, the Gabbai Rebbe Yechon Gordon was mechabit somebody with Hagbe. But there was a younger man there, Simcha Zurkin, who was on Shlichus, I think, in Morocco, and he had come to the Rebbe, and he was going to bench Gimel. So he benched Gimel, and after he finished benching Gimel, the Rebbe motioned to Rebbe Yechon Gordon that he should give Reb Simcha Zurkin Hagbe. Reb Simcha Zurkin went Hagbe. After he went Hagbe, the Rebbe turned around to the person who originally was told to go Hagbe, and the Rebbe said something to this effect, that he should be meichel for the fact that he didn't get Hagbe, even though he was asked first, given the kibbut first, nevertheless he should meichel, and because since he benched Gimel, therefore he got the Hagbe. But the Rebbe, I don't remember what he said exactly, but something to the effect that he should be meichel for the fact that he didn't get the Hagbe. In the late Chofs, or in the beginning of the Lameds, there was a younger man who came from Eretz Yisrael to the Rebbe. And that time, one of the Fabrengens, when the Rebbe was speaking, one of the Siches, this younger man who was sitting on the line, the shuras of tables that was right in front of the Rebbe. The Rebbe was sitting, and there were many shuras of tables inside. This was right by the front of the Rebbe. And in the middle of the Siche, he was trying to talk to somebody. And the Rebbe noticed it. And the Rebbe said, and he called him by his name, his last name, "Vet endig reden, will ich mamshich sein." This was the only time that I am aware of that this happened, that the Rebbe would stop in the middle of a siche and mention someone's name that he's talking and he's mevalvel. But this is the words that the Rebbe said, when the name mentioned, "Vet endig reden, will ich mamshich sein." And obviously he stopped, but it shook up everybody that there was such a possibility that someone should talk in such a way that it annoyed the Rebbe that he had to stop and make the person stop. Reb Shmuel Levittin was known to be a Baal Shmua. He had all the stories and he was able to repeat it meduyek. So I once asked him, why doesn't he write it down? Like other people wrote down the stories that they remembered from Lubavitch. So why didn't he write it down? So he tells me, because when he started learning Yeridea, he was very young. I think he was 14, I'm not sure. So it was hard for him to get everything, all the shittas straight. So he went to Yechidus to the Rebbe Rashab, and he asked the Rebbe Rashab what to do. So the Rebbe Rashab said to him that the eitzah is, you should write it down. When you write it down, it clarifies it in your mind and things get clear. And then the Rebbe said to him, don't make a sefer. So therefore, he feels that he shouldn't make a sefer. That's why he doesn't write it down. That's one thing he said. Another thing, it took him a long time till he got glasses. And he only got glasses after he asked the Rebbe. And he said why? Because when he had to go to Priziv, it means he had to stand to go to the draft, and they looked all kinds of eitzes to avoid the drafts. So people would do things to themselves in order that they should be sick, so they should not go to the draft. One of the things that people used to do is that they used to start wearing glasses. In those times, there was the law that if someone wears glasses, he's put from the army. So when he asked the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe was saying what he should do, so he asked, should he put on glasses? So the Rebbe Rashab, I don't know what eitzah he gave him, I don't remember, but one thing he said, that's not that he shouldn't put on glasses. So therefore he felt that he shouldn't put on glasses. But at the end, when he was older and he needed glasses, he wouldn't put it on until he asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, our Rebbe, and the Rebbe agreed that he should put on glasses. That's when he put on glasses. And another thing that he told me once, the day I think of my chasana, he said that before his chasana, the Rebbe Rashab told him, so trachten, mamshich sein, makifim auf dem ganzen Leben. That by the chuppah, you're mamshich makifim auf dem ganzen Leben. In Lekutei Sichos Chelik Hey, page 139, the Rebbe quotes the pasuk, "Vaticheno einov mereis," that the eyes of Yitzchak became weak and was hard of seeing. And Rashi says, "Ba'oshnon shel elu," because of the smoke of the wives of Esau that brought korbanos to Avodah Zarah. So from that smoke, it ruined his eyes. So the Rebbe asks, true, smoke is no good for your eyes. There's a pasuk that says, "Ke'oshon lo'inayim." But you have to say that the smoke wasn't so strong, because if the smoke would be that strong that could make a person blind, then the wives of Esav, the ones that brought the karbonos and made the smoke, certainly should have ruined their eyes, even more than the eyes of Yitzchak, and we don't find that. So the Rebbe explains that the reason it ruined his eyes is not because of the smoke, it's because it was smoke for Avodah Zarah. Yitzchak was, as the Pasuk says, someone who has clear eyes, pure eyes, doesn't see anything evil, so therefore he couldn't take Avodah Zarah. And therefore it caused Vatikano Enes because it ruined his eyes. And then the Rebbe brings a story, similar to this famous story that's written in the Maimer Kenar Yisrael of Samach Vov, the story of Reb Nochem Chernobyler, that by mistake they once gave him chol of akum, and he couldn't see the milk. And then he explained that the Mishnah says, Chol of shechol v'yakum ve'ein Yisrael reyeyu, milk that was milked by a goy and the Yid doesn't see it, the din is that you're not allowed to drink it. So he touched that Mishnah, that the Mishnah is saying, Chol of shechol v'yakum, milk that was milked by a goy, ein Yisrael reyeyu, a Yid can't see it, because what a Yid shouldn't see, he doesn't see. This is the way it says, and look at the Sichas. This is a Sicha that Rebbe said on Yud Aleph Nisan Tovshin Chov Beis in the Shnas HaShivim from the Rebbe's birth. But in the Sicha itself by the Fabrengen, the Rebbe said the same idea but told a different story of Reb Nochem Chernobyler. There he told the story that Friday night he once came into a room and he had to get to a certain place, so he was feeling by the wall how to get to the place. In other words, he was touching as if it was dark. So they asked him, but there was a candle burning. Why does he touch it as if it's dark? So he answered, he doesn't see any candle. He didn't see any candle burning. They found out later that the candle that was burning was put on Be'isur. I guess it was put on Shabbos. And since this was a candle, that it was a Osir candle, so a tzaddik that worked over his body so strongly, he cannot see anything that's Osir, so to him it didn't shine. Which is the same idea as the story with the milk, but it's a different story. When the Sicha came out, when they prepared the Sicha to be Magia to the Rebbe, they gave it to the Rebbe, Tovshin Lamed Aleph. They wrote this story as the dugma, the example to the idea that the Rebbe said why Yitzchak couldn't take the smoke of the Avodah Zarah. He told the story of Nochem Chernobyl, and they wrote the story that the Rebbe said by the Fabreng, and the story with the candle. And then the Rebbe said to change it and to put in the story from the Chol of Akum. It's the same idea, but to put in that story. And it seemed from what the Rebbe wrote that the reason is because the story of the Chol of Akum has a source in Chassidus. It's written in the Maimer of Kenar Yisrael Ve'aveyu from Tov Reish Samach Vov. But the other story with the candle that he couldn't see, it seems like it doesn't have a mokir in Maimorim of the Rabbeim or sayings of the Rabbeim. It's probably a story that Chassidim tell. So therefore, when it came to print it, so the Rebbe wanted that the story that has a mokir, the story with the milk, should be printed. Now, why he told the story by the Fabrengen with the candle could be because Lepel Mamish, that story brings out more that he Poshet couldn't see something that's osir. While by milk, there's a special Mishnah that says, Chol of Shechol ve'akum el Yisrael rei. I don't know this, I'm just saying a svara. But Lepel, the story of the milk, has a source. That's why it's printed in Likud Sichas. And the other one, the Rebbe said it as the Inyan. But when it came to print it, the Rebbe said to change it to the story of the Chol of Akum. Many years the Rebbe would daven Mincha Ma'ariv upstairs in the small shul. Till later on when it changed, the Rebbe started davening Mincha Ma'ariv downstairs. When the Rebbe davened Mincha Ma'ariv upstairs, there were certain anhagas you were able to see. And I'm going to mention a few of the anhagas that just come to mind. I'm sure there are more, which I'll remind myself. But in the meantime, just a few anhagas that you were able to see then that comes to my mind. The Rebbe, when he would come in, he would daven Mincha Ma'ariv in the weekdays, standing by the door. That means the door entering into the shul, coming from the lobby where you have the elevator. He would walk into that door, and by that door there was a table, and there was a bench on both sides of the table, but on the side next to the wall, that's where the Rebbe's place would be to sit. He would walk in with the gartel in his hand, and he would stand there facing the crowd. In other words, he was standing by the front of the table. His back was to the wall where the clock is, and he was facing the crowd. Didn't look at the people, but he was putting on his gartel. He came in without wearing his gartel. He came in holding the gartel in his hand, and he was saying, you could see, it seemed like by Mincha he was saying Karbonis. While he was putting on the gartel, he was saying Karbonis. And then also by Ma'ariv, he would put on his gartel. And why he's putting on his gartel, that's when he's saying Vorachim and Shiramailis. And it seems interesting that he started saying, whether it's Korbanos or Vorachim, it seemed like that's what it was, without a gartel. In other words, when he started saying, he wasn't wearing the gartel yet. And interesting also, the way you put on his gartel, he would take both hands, the two fingers, and put on his stomach, which was like, seemed like measuring something or feeling something. And then I started wrapping the gartel. And while he was saying, or Korbanos by Minche, or Vorachim Shiramaylas by Ma'ariv. And what happened was that the Chazan, since he started Ashrei right away, and the Rebbe by Minche was not up to Ashrei yet, he would be still saying Korbanos. When the Chazan finished Chotzi Kaddish after Ashrei before Shemoneh Esrei, everyone went back and came forth and started Shemoneh Esrei. The Rebbe did the same. The Rebbe was standing on his place, went back when everyone went back to Shemoneh Esrei, came forth, but you could see many times that he did not start Shemoneh Esrei with the minyan when everyone started, because you could see that he was not up to Shemoneh Esrei yet. And it took a few moments, and you could see that the Rebbe, after a few moments, started bent his feet and mishtachave by beginning of Shemoneh Esrei. In other words, you were able to see that even though when everyone went back and came forth, he did the same. He went back, came forth to the wall holding a siddur. There was no standard then, holding a siddur. But he didn't start Shemoneh Esrei right away. He started Shemoneh Esrei when he was ready, which was a few moments later. That's one thing you were able to see. Another thing you were able to see, that when it came to Tachnun, like this Rebbe was normally when he stood in this place, like Chazor Hashatz, he sat on the bench. But then when not by Chazor Hashatz, when there was time to stand, he would be facing the people. The whole shul, which was in front of the Rebbe, he was facing the people. But when it came to Tachnun, when it came to Hashamnu, he turned around and faced the wall, which is towards Mizrach. Now, you could think, what was the reason why he did it? Maybe there's an inyan that when you say Hashamnu, when you say the Vidu, you should face Mizrach. Or maybe it was done for a practical reason. Since the Rebbe was facing the Eilam, you should stand facing the Eilam, saying Hashamnu is not so nice. I don't know. But the Eilam always, he turned around, faced Mizrach when he was saying Hashamnu. He said Hashamnu, he banged by everyone, and we know that there are the Hashamnu, the Vidu is broken up in a few pieces, so he would say Hashamnu Bagadnu Gzalnu Banu Defi, stop for a second, mamish for a second, then start Havinu, till to fall in the Sheker, and then stop for a mamish a second, then Yoatznaro, till Kashina Erev, and then Rashainu, and till Titonu. And by each one he would clap. Then when it came to Sanu, the Rebbe clapped when he said Sanu, and kept his hands on his heart, while he said the whole line, by the last word, Hishonu, he gave a clap again, and then he took his hands off, and then he continued with the Kei L'Erech HaPayim.